Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome back for episode 98 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on August 23rd, 2017 on twitch.tv. Big shout out to the live chat here. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. This is your host, Blue Crew 86. Justin is sitting this one out due to some sleep deprivation caused by work. Don't read too much into it. He loves all factions equally, no matter what he says in Discord. Also, be sure to let Mel know that we miss her over at Twitter at The Wind of the Stars. Life is still proving to be a little bit hectic for her. Hopefully it's calming down a little bit here shortly. And we do want to show her some support as she's getting everything sorted out. But from the depths of the madness-inducing mind maps, we are joined by our favorite Gunter, the one and only Green-Eyed Music Lover. Green, hope you're doing well. Looking forward to tonight's chat.
I'm actually, and I told you this the other day, is like I'm actually kind of nervous about tonight's chat for a couple of reasons. One, because of our guest, and quite honestly, I don't know if you know this, everybody. We have Sir Wallen with us, and he's actually the one who got me interested in lore to begin with. I watched his videos before I even knew who Bife was, and so it's like, okay, I'm nervous about him being here, and I'm also nervous because of all the salt that I keep getting about being part of New Monarchy. And it's like, guys,
I don't know why would you get salt for being part of New Monarchy?
Mm-hmm.
Probably because Future War Cult's the only faction you should be a part of.
Well, oh, good. We're still divided.
We still got an even division even without Justin. Well, in the guest co-host spotlight tonight, we are joined by the man lovingly known as the lore potato of the infamous lore seekers, Sir Wallen. Wallen, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. I've had a kind of a gnarly week. This is definitely a nice break from everything that's going on. I have jury duty to go to.
Oh,
in the morning.
God! Oh,
yeah.
So get a book and.
No, I'm stoked.
Oh, okay.
I can't wait to listen to this court case about a guy who assaulted a cat or something. I don't know what it is.
Oh man.
It's always something. It's always something. My wife has been called like 3 or 4 times, and knock on wood, I have not been called any. So, but every time she goes, she's like, we're both like psych majors, so we both like. I'm like, she gets dismissed like immediately. It's so funny. She's like, I was there for, I think it was like an hour or two for them to do all the dispositions or whatever, and it's like, yeah, she's like one of the first that gets asked to. Thank you for coming in, but we don't need you. It's like, okay, cool.
I hope they dismiss really quick.
Yeah. You know, I mean, they do give you $5 a day or whatever. I mean, whatever it is. It's like something.
I take it back. I want to stay now. Definitely.
It's something ridiculous. I just love it because it's like, I guess it's okay. I don't know. I'm on the fence as far as that. But let's run through the intro. Just say, chat, just say you believe everyone is always guilty. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Let's run through the intro real quick, and then we'll jump into the chat. The topic of today's chat is going to be a look at the lore of New Monarchy. I asked Green to put together a high-level summary of the topic, and this is what she had to say.
Not the past, not the future. The present is where we should turn our eyes. The city is divided. We must unite beneath a single will. Our choice is simple. Find our strength or face extinction. What rules us, those of New Monarchy, is our service to the greater welfare of the city. So speak with the voice of the people, or be prepared to face them. For a true leader speaks with the voice of the people. They will know you fight not for yourself, but for the people's will. And there is strength in unity. And a king of many will be the king of all. Because a finger can be broken, but a fist cannot.
Before we get into that, however, I do have a few housekeeping notes. In our last chat, we took a look at strikers. If you missed that and have any interest in hearing our thoughts, please be sure to check out the new www.focusfirechat.com for archives of all previous chats, links to other aspects of Focus Fire Chat out on the internet, and a growing collection of community articles. If you don't mind, please give us some feedback on iTunes to let us know how we're doing, as well as helping us continue to grow. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a cross-community gathering where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within the lore of Destiny and other games. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday at about 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a recap of the previous week's chat for those who are unable to participate. Please be sure to also give some support to the other podcasts in the Guardian Radio Network, found at theguardiansofdestiny.com. These include Guardian Radio, the first and longest running Destiny podcast on the net, Guardian 1, Ghost and Echoes, which also has the Destiny audio grimoire, and the network's newest edition, a non-Destiny focused podcast, Paragon Radio. Our next chat is going to be a look at some of our favorite memories from Destiny 1. With that all being said, let's go ahead and dive into the information and thoughts that the community had about New Monarchy. Lorebot, let's go.
Querying Grimoire database. Results found. Displaying on screen.
Thank you, Randy. Yeah, no, I don't do it the same. We need to record him saying that at some point.
I think at this point we just need to record it, and I just need to put it into the intro clip as part of the intro clip.
Yeah. Or as one of your little fancy buttons that you have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. We just kind of spam thank you, Randy. But since Justin is gone this week, it comes to me to kind of start everything off, and I think a good place to start off is, like we normally do, talking about the factions, is who are the New Monarchy? Like, where did they come from? What do we have in Grimoire for them? And so the New Monarchy card that we have says, hope will be born from the collective triumphs of the king and us all. And then later on it says, the New Monarchy rose from the ashes of the faction wars with a simple, inclusive, guiding tenet. Together we rise. Leery of the fragile state of the city's politics, the New Monarchy maintains a watchful eye on the Speaker, the Consensus, and the Vanguard, seeking the leadership that will properly reign over the city and return our civilization to the Golden Age splendor, not splinter. If that leadership cannot be found, then it must be created. And like I said in kind of the intro, I get a lot of flack for being part of New Monarchy, but I think this is one of the cards that kind of just points it out. My reason why is that New Monarchy it recognizes that there's a king in all of us in some respects, and it's very much so wanting to raise somebody up from the ground level and develop leaders, whether it be a single monarch, which they're hoping for, and if they can't do that, just to kind of grow a new monarch. What do you think, Blue?
I actually was looking at it, and so let it be known I'm a Dead Orbit follower, so whatever.
No,
there,
you don't say.
Yeah, no, not at all. But the cool thing about the New Monarchy is talking about the king in all of us philosophy. If you look at the New Monarchy logo, I was just kind of looking at this right before the chat, and I forgot, I don't know if I put notes in here, but I was looking at it, and it's actually, it's a triangle, right? Everyone knows this is a triangle. The cool thing is, I think it's called an equilateral triangle. I am not good with that type of stuff.
Equal sides.
But equal sides, right. Everyone is equal, but it's pointed up. So, and this is an interesting juxtaposition to the Concordat, which is the fist pointing down, pushing down, which we know there is a bit of tension between those two, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But the interesting thing for me on the triangle is the notches that are in it. So, and I'm just kind of curious. I kind of have my own theory. I mean, I know it's not representative of the Guardian classes because New Monarchy is not the factions are not Guardian factions. They're all civilian based. But do you think, and they're pretty much predominantly all the same except for that last little hash that's kind of at the edge. But do you think that's representative of the races of the city? Because, we have 3 races.
Right. If it is, why is one of them open to the outside? Is it meaning that it's not inclusive within the...
I think actually it's meaning...
triangle of trust? I mean,
the triangle of trust. I was actually thinking that would be... this is me kind of tapping into the uneasiness about the New Monarchy that I have. But I think that's kind of the indication that one of those races is the race from which the leader will come. Wallen, I know you might have a connection there.
Well, so I mean, there's a lot of symbolism in death, right? I mean, it's in the lore, it's in the game world itself. I think one of the more interesting characteristics of New Monarchy that I think attracts a lot of people to it, and it's probably the best argument that you can make for the faction, is that they're one of the few factions that actually wants to do something about the city and humanity's current state. Exactly. Whereas, like Dead Orbit, for example, they have an end goal, but it isn't really an end goal. It's sort of an escapist mentality. And, Future War Cult, they just want to fight. And that's all they see into the future. So in terms of the actual symbolism, I look at the triangle as again, a monarchy. You have a triangle and it's a pyramid type thing where your king, your monarch, your pharaoh, whatever you want to be, is at the very top and everyone else is below it. But for a monarch to operate well, ideally in this sense, everyone has to be a part of the greater good. So while you may have one individual leader that does rule over everyone, it takes everyone working together to get to that.
Yeah, I like that actually. It would be like a utopian state, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I was New Monarchy when I first started playing, I rolled a Titan beta going into Vanilla Destiny, New Monarchy, and the main thing that attracted me to it wasn't necessarily the philosophy of monarchies in general with the government type. It's more or less the argument that this is the faction that wants to bring us back to a golden age, and they're actively taking steps towards that. Whereas the other two factions don't seem to really be that interested in getting us back to that general direction because I guess at their core philosophies, they don't believe that we can either get there or it's just not in the card.
Yeah, and I know like with Dead Orbit, they think that it was just because of a miracle. And then Future War Cult is just like, well, I mean, you kind of touched on that. They're just kind of like, it's a war. Like, that's what it is. It's just, we're not going to get back to a golden age because we're going to it's a struggle uphill, period.
Well, both of the other factions are so based on looking into the future or dreading about the future that they don't see that there are problems that are happening right now in front of them. And I think that's one of the things I like about New Monarchy, kind of like Wallen said, is that it's based on improving the lives of the city people. It's based on helping build them up. And yes, it helps us, but that faction in and of itself is to help raise up some of the city and help them.
That's that, yeah. And I think, I mean, one of those really good examples is actually in the next card, which is talking about the representative of New Monarchy, Exeter Hideo. He says, an upstanding citizen, Hideo was once known for his lavish gifts to children and the elderly. Since he moved from plasteel manufacturing to the New Monarchy, he has been less forthcoming about his business and less free with his funds. But, as one of the public faces of the monarchy, he speaks with genuine passion and conviction about the possibilities of a united future. So, I mean, there's so much stuff to unpack in that. I think that it's an interesting juxtaposition because he used to be very generous, and then as soon as he became part of the New Monarchy, he became less transparent about stuff.
Well, it didn't say transparent.
Well, I mean, he's become less forthcoming. He's been less forthcoming about his business. So I kind of took that as being less open to what he's doing. But I mean, yeah, he became less I don't even know the word I'm thinking
gracious.
of. Yeah,
More of a politician.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's kind of what happened. He took on a leadership role, and instead of being able to do what he will, he had to think about the politics of it and how he would look if he did or did not do things.
That's fair. And Wallen, I know you wanted to jump in on that one.
Can we talk about like his card? I mean, I mean, obviously not all the viewers, but just the image alone, and like you can get this in the game. But you know, look at the guy's stance. He has his arms back, his chest is out. He seems to be in a very powerful stance. I mean, again, symbolism does go a long way, and you know, the Bungie art directors have this in mind. You're talking about an individual who views himself as sort of the higher class. Typically when someone does give gifts to the poor, gives gifts to the wealthy, or, you know, as your wealth and the wealth trickles down, there is some sort of concept in that individual's mind where they're doing their part, whether for good or because of public appearances, whatever it is. Hideo seems to really emphasize this point that he is in a way above some of this other stuff. I think in the card itself, it talks about the possibilities of a united future. But in my mind, I don't think it means a united future in the sense that the consensus is united. I think it more or less means that there is only one faction, and that is New Monarchy. That's the united future. Everyone's united under that mindset.
I actually would take it a different direction, because I think New Monarchy is one of the few that is afraid of the Guardians, like truly and utterly. And then we kind of talked about this a little bit in Dead Orbit, and how they're not necessarily super wanting the Guardians to come with them with some of the things. They're using them to get information and things. Yeah. I think New Monarchy kind of has that same flavor, where it's very much so people-based, city people-based, not Guardian, and that it's trying to set up a government ran by the people. I mean, it is almost to a T a socialist setup in a lot of their tenets. And I know a lot of people are going to yell communism and stuff like that. It's really, I don't think it is communism. I think that's pushing it a little too far. If anything, I think New Monarchy maybe has some, what did I put in the notes? I put it in the notes. Where was it? Historical materialism, or even like an elected monarchy type situation, where it's still very socialistic and it's in and of itself. But I think that it has a lot of, it's for the people, it's by the people, and it's going to be people ran. I don't think they want to be ran by the consensus.
Isn't there, and correct me if I'm wrong at any point here, but my memory serves that there's a point there somewhere in the lore where Hideo talks about putting Zavala as the head of New Monarchy.
Yeah.
He does, but he knows that Zavala won't do it.
Right, but it's again, I think it goes back to that sort of core concept of, if it's not a Guardian, and you know Zavala is a Guardian, I think Hideo and the other factions understand post-faction war that Guardians are the primary driving force of humanity's future. It is not the bread and butter peasantry that are going to drive the humanity into a new golden age. It's going to be the people who are wielding the light. So while Zavala may never do it, and whether Hideo's intentions are to, you know, say he wants Zavala, but really something else, I think that ultimately New Monarchy legitimately means they want to put a king in power, but a sort of an all-powerful good king, not the bad Louis the 14th or Louis the 16th from history.
They want a king that has the people's ideas in mind. They want a king that listens to the people.
And I think the other thing to take for the other factions, you know, again, going back to their tentativeness towards the Guardians. I mean, Dead Orbit, when you talk about Dead Orbit's attitude towards Guardians, I mean, you know, their base goal is get away from Earth and get away from the Traveler. So Guardians kind of, I mean, there is a limit to which the light will reach, you know? And I think Dead Orbit's kind of just pragmatic about it. It's like, well, why would we take them with us if they're not going to actually be of use after a certain period? And Future War Cult, I think, uses the Guardians as, they see them as weapons, you know, but then again, Future War Cult sees everyone as weapons. They're just, you know, a better designed weapon. New Monarchy is actually, you know, and we've kind of been talking about this, New Monarchy is concerned with the city and with building the city back into that golden age. And because of that, well, where's the city located? It's here. It's right below the Traveler. So they're going to, they're going to want the Guardians to be somewhat involved. And yeah, and I think it's an in-game quote from Hideo. He says, if Zavala would help us, I'd put him on a throne, but he won't. Mm-hmm. So, go for it.
I mean, that brings us up to kind of the next item that we had on the show notes, is that the S-38 Regal Bearing, which is the New Monarchy Sparrow, Hideo actually says a monarch cannot simply be powerful. A monarch must also look powerful. And so the idea of having a guardian would definitely fit that. I don't know if we're going to be offered up that kind of thing, because we do have some power within New Monarchy, or at least guardians do in general. Maybe not the consensus or the vanguard or the speaker or anybody like that, but there's another, can't remember which item it is off the top of my head. There's another item that talks about it's votes are in, which is the ship.
Oh yeah. The votes are in. Yeah.
The Guardians have spoken. New Monarchy ships are being deployed to all voters. I mean, that talks about being a citizen that actually votes, that has a say, which sounds very democratic. But
so my only counterpoint to that is that there is a vote ship for every faction, because Dead Orbit has a vote ship and Future World has a vote ship as well.
Right.
So I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that in there. It's New Monarchy. That's not a unique thing to the New Monarchy,
But my vote within, or my idea about that is the fact that the Guardians are the ones that help dictate.
Oh, okay. I got you.
All the voters get a ship.
I got you.
Whoever the voters are, whether the voters are actual Guardians or citizens or whomever, I don't know if citizens would have a ship. That's something interesting to think about.
And Wallen, I know you wanted to jump in there.
So I think, you've got really solid notes here in terms of like historical governments that are really associated with a lot of this in terms of it. The only thing that I would like to add is if you look at Chinese history, specifically in the time of like the Warring States period, where you had like 16 different kingdoms coming together. And, this is the first time Buddhism was really coming in, and Taoism as religions really coming in. There was a talk about the will of heaven, that a monarch or a leader had to have the will of heaven. And it was sort of this divine mandate that was granted by some higher power.
Like a pharaoh.
Yeah, right. And so in this concept, it talked about the individual had to be good. He had to be intrinsically good. He had to work for the people, work with the people. He couldn't be amassing his own wealth. He had to be building up defenses or taking care of the poor and farmland. To a certain extent, I kind of look at it like that Hideo wants to look for an individual that, while maybe not the divine mandate of heaven or anything like that, but can fit that caricature of an individual that is powerful enough, looks powerful enough that individuals can attract themselves to, and is powerful enough to enforce his own will. I really don't think we're going to, ideally, I don't assume it to be the shadow council that oversees a monarch. I ideally would want New Monarchy to put an actual individual into power that operates sort of on a chain of command going down. But I look at it again like the will of heaven type mentality is sort of how I look at it.
Yeah, definitely. The only thing that I would have to say about having it be like a traditional monarchy or like a divine right, because think about the Catholic Church, for example, which is probably my closest relationship to this. The Pope is an elected official. He's elected by the cardinal, all the cardinals and everything, and it's kind of a huge deal. But yes, he has kind of divine right according to the eyes of people within the church. But at the same time, he's not an all-powerful king. I don't think. Yeah, first among equals. Blue said that in our chat. I don't think that the New Monarchy king or the new monarch in general for New Monarchy will be all powerful and have no bounds, I guess it's not the right word, but like in Mark of the Initiative, which is one of the items in our second, we're getting kind of philosophy and who New Monarchy are all together. It talks about speak with the voice of the people or be prepared to face them. That sounds, yes, like you could have a monarch overthrown by the people, but to me that sounds more like a democratic system where they have a vote. They have a say a little bit more than just like, hey, we don't like you, we're going to overthrow you type thing. I think it's more like an elected monarch, kind of like the Pope in some respects, even though they're kind of looking for that one person to overhead him. They still want it to be respect the people's ideas.
Yeah, the Holy Roman Empire back in like the 1700s sort of did this, where you had elected princes from various states, and essentially it was more of a popularity game back then. But the concept on paper was really good. Typically, it put individuals through a trial by fire in terms of what were their abilities. Could they manage an entire government very well? Could they manage multiple individuals, multiple personalities very well? For new monarchy to succeed in a system like this, it has to be an individual that people can attach themselves to in a way where he commands respect, not just by being all powerful, but by being wise enough to understand that there are multiple viewpoints. I think that's why Hideo wants Zavala, because in a way, Zavala is the voice of the vanguard. He is sort of our one true individual that kind of guides us in terms of our war path and where we should be going. He has Ikora sitting on his side, guiding him, giving him like the spy master, and then Cade's role is still, to me, clouded. I'm not 100% sure.
I thought you were going to say court jester for a second.
I mean, yeah, he's got a serious face, can't you tell?
I think I touched on this in one of my lore videos. I think he hides his true self through that mask of humor.
Comedy.
He's not. That's not who he is. But I think the one thing that we really didn't explore in Destiny 1 that sort of doesn't hurt the faction lore, but it doesn't support it as well as it could, is the consensus's relationship with the faction.
I agree.
How do these factions operate in terms of the circle? We know there's a consensus. We know they have representatives that sit down and talk about the general nature of the city. Laws are passed, but what is the general power play? Who has the ability to really control it? If I was to say anything, if there was a faction to side with in terms of restoring the city, it is probably New Monarch, 100%, just based on what their philosophy is right now. The other two factions don't serve that general notion.
Well, to talk about the Vanguard mentors in general, going back to your point on Zavala being kind of the leader of them, which obviously he is, he's also the one who's most concerned about the city's safety. Ikora, she is concerned with it, but at the same time, she's very much so an intellectual and goes and does the spy master type thing, whereas Zavala is literally, if it's for the good of the city, yes. And that's what you see in all the cutscenes. So I can see why Zavala would be the one that they look to the most because of that. Yeah. War Master City Manager, Spy Network Research, Bounty Assigner, Scout. Cade is more than just a bounty assigner.
No, but that's what, that's what he's predominantly assigned with. Like, that's if you look at a lot of the bounties on the bounty board, and even with I always mess this one up. Shadow Thief. So we know Shadow Thief, and then what's the one on Venus that was in vanilla? The really annoying one that you got to sit on the throne at the end.
Oh,
Winter's Run.
Yeah.
Winter's Run? Yeah. So those both were directly from Cade. Like, Cade is kind of the Zavala's concerned with the defense and like within like the city and all this. Ikora's kind of the learning about what's going on about it, but then Cade kind of seems like he's almost the person that's out beyond responsible for the people who are out beyond the walls and being like, there's a threat, let's cut it down. This is, that's kind of his thing, is he's kind of responsible for those teams of guardians that are beyond the wall, in the way that he's assigning resources it's not really like he doesn't have like the assignment authority that Zavala definitely has, but he seems kind of like that type of person. He's the one that's like, hey, this is the bounty, go get this guy. Not Winter's Run. God, I hate strikes. The strike on Venus with the priest. Archon Priest. What was that? Well, anyways, that strike, that's also Cade. Cade was the one that was like, hey, this thing got real, he's the one that's kind of giving us this information and being like, hey, this is the next thing that we need you to do. Whereas Zavala kind of was like, he was more concerned with things domestic, I guess is the way I kind of view the interplay with him.
Cade also has a vendetta sometimes.
Oh yeah, well yes. Cade has a problem with separating personal needs from professional professional requirements.
Yeah.
So sometimes his vendettas do kind of make sense. Taniks kind of made sense. I mean, Taniks killed Andal Brask, so Cade was legitimately a little pissed with that individual.
Something that Wallen said about the factions, just kind of how in D1 they really didn't go into too much depth about the faction interaction with the Vanguard or the Speaker, or actually anybody's interaction with the Speaker. I mean, really, guys, I'm glad we have some knowledge that the Speaker is going to be pivotal at the beginning of D2. That's helpful. But we having not a lot of information about any of the factions, it's really easy to take a gossipy stance for them because we don't have a lot of information about Dead Orbit or New Monarchy or Future War Cult. It's all very surface, I would think, which I think is why New Monarchy gets a lot of bad rap, because you hear Hideo talking smack about everybody else, and it's like, okay, Gossip Queen, stop it, hold your horses a little bit. It's fine. It's like, God.
Yeah, but I think the cool thing is that there is references that Jay's putting this in the Discord chat right now.
Dead Orbit secured another area.
But that's what I'm saying. There's solid references that the factions are still fighting each other when they're clearly not supposed to. They should be at peacetime. They should be working at least towards a common goal or having some type of armistice, and it isn't happening. So it's one of those things that I think starts with the faction wars, goes to the Concordats' immediate dropout, and then the addition of the Future War Cult. These factions have not played nice with each other in their entire concept. Before, when Guardian were called Risen, and the factions started coming about, these ideologies obviously are going to clash with one another.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same. I mean, there's a bunch of people in a trapped area within a wall. Of course, they're going to have disagreements. You just confined a bunch of toddlers essentially in a playpen and gave them Legos to throw at each other.
That totally never happens. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm giving your son Legos next year.
Please do. I need more toys.
You need more. Of course you do. But as far as the factions, they try to create some order, but they want their order.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's 100%. And a lot of the New Monarchy cards sort of talk about this. In your notes, you have one here that basically says, we're going to be, the city is divided. We must unite beneath a single will, heart of the order. And I think it does, again, speak to the fact that New Monarchy really does understand, and to an extent they are right, that a divided unity, if you can call it even a unity of factions or a congress of factions coming together, not really deciding on anything, is not going to get us anywhere. And foreshadowing into the story of Destiny 2, it's very clear that these factions and their petty warfare really hasn't done anything. Now they no longer have a city to fight over and squabble over. And so it raises the question, at least in my mind when I came into this podcast, what are these factions going to do? Are they going to use this opportunity to really take power and say that the consensus in the Vanguard failed? Or are they going to drop back and be like, well, maybe we need to work together? Personally, I hope for story's sake they take power, because it, again, gives players new reasons to go after it.
Well, don't we have kind of that trailer where you see some people of the city taking up arms? I mean, we have the dodgeball card, where we're teaching children how to actually fight a battle in some respects, even though it's dodgeball.
Right.
Zavala and them. But it would be great to see the city people take more power, because right now, yes, it's all about the Guardians because that's what we're playing. We're playing as Guardians. But the people who don't have that kind of power, of course they're terrified. Of course they're scared, and they're trusting in these superheroes, essentially. Think about comic books, for example. What was the DC comic line where, not DC, Marvel, that they're coming out with a movie soon where they make everybody sign into this thing?
Oh, Civil War. No.
Yeah.
Wait, Civil War?
Isn't it?
That was a
Where they have
terrible
to sign
arc,
in-
but yes, it was. That was the Captain America movie.
Right, and you have that in X-Men too, where all the mutants have to be registered.
Yeah. That was the. I just blanked on it, but yeah, that's also.
Well, no, it was X-Men like First Class or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It was one of the X-Men movies where all the mutants had to register to the government and.
Yeah. That's right. The Sokovia Accords. Thank you, Contraband.
Yeah,
it would be a really interesting counterpoint to our story if we see the people of the city actually stand up. Now, granted, it's probably not going to happen in D2 because of the city being scattered like it is, but it'll be interesting to see how the factions recover, because we do know the factions are going to be there. I mean, I've seen armor for New Monarchy. I was really scared when we went to the farm, and the only faction that was there was Dead Orbit.
It's okay. We accept everyone.
You have no idea how terrified I was about that. I was like, no, that's the one I don't want to go to. I don't mind Future War Cult. I just don't want to go to Dead Orbit. But we know that they're going to be there. So how they're going to play a role in Destiny 2 is going to be interesting to see how they pull the city people, because it is a faction of this. It's factions of the city people. Yes, Guardians are a part of it, and they help with resources, but how are the people of the city going to stand up after this destruction that's going to happen because of Gary?
I mean, I think it's a good question. I think it really does come down to hopefully they're explaining a little bit more of the city, because, in Destiny 1, you are disconnected from the entire experience. So ideally, we do get an opportunity to legitimately see civilians and fight for them, or have some reason to fight for them beyond the threats outside of the walls.
Yeah, and I just to go back real quick, I liked the conversation that you guys are having about the factions and like how they are constantly like bickering at each other. I think it's the best word for it, because they really are. They're just constantly bickering. But I mean, the thing that to me always kind of makes that make sense and not be something that I'm not really surprised about is the fact that, like, these are not the only factions, right? We know that there are, and this kind of goes back to the not having a lot of lore about the factions, because everyone kind of, if you're just diving in, you kind of just assume that these are the only factions, right? These are the only factions. Well, that's, it's not. These are actually just the major factions that have been elevated into the consensus. And I've always kind of viewed... Oh, go for it.
I think these are the only factions that have gotten in with the Guardians. I mean, yes, they're part of the consensus, but if we had other factions that actually had Guardian representation, that would be
no, I mean, I think these are the only factions that are allowed in the tower. And so, of course, I mean, that would translates into their, brushing shoulders with the best of the best, which, again, political. It is political. It's, we do gain faction rep with them. But I've also always kind of, and I talked about this a little bit in the episode 87 when we were doing an update on the city, but I kind of was, I was looking at the city, like the political the political foundation and the political makeup of the city. And I've always kind of seen it kind of as an anocracy. And to just real quick to kind of go back to that, an anocracy is a regime type where power is not vested in public institutions as like a normal democracy, but is rather spread amongst elite groups who are constantly competing with each other for power. So in So it's basically faction wars is what it is. But the thing is that anocracy is not surprisingly the least resilient political system to short-term shocks. So basically what it does is it creates this promise, but not yet the actuality of an inclusive and effective political economy, and then threatens members of the established elite, and therefore is very, very vulnerable to disruption and armed violence, which is kind of what we're seeing, with Destiny 2 is that's kind of disruption and armed violence when the city blows up. And so basically what it is like, it's these groups that are promising and, wheeling and dealing around more so than even probably anything that we really see a lot of in our world in reality as well. But that's where I see the city as being as like this constant. So like, in ancient Rome, for example, you had politicians, and the politicians were beholden to their families, of course, but they were really out for themselves. They were always out for themselves. That was kind of the thing. Now, what they would do is they would do everything that they did in order to build up their family name, with the intent that everything that they actually get, they get to partake in the spoils of their accomplishments, with the understanding that would trickle down into their family. You kind of see that with the factions in that they're constantly sharpening each other by competing with each other.
That sounds very much so like the Hive all of a sudden.
Well, I mean, and yes, but
I was thinking the Three Sisters.
Right. I mean, and again, yes, but no, because you start getting to a point where you're splitting hairs as far as the intentions go. And I mean, granted, this is one of the arguments. This is an argument for the fall of Rome, is that this type of social build creates a political environment or a socio-political environment in which no one is ever safe. You're always constantly fighting, and you're always constantly sharpening against someone else. I mean, Caesar, look right there, et tu, Brutus, like that. That's kind of the pinnacle of that, is that eventually, if you make a single slip, someone will be there to stab you in the back.
Right. Right.
And that's the downside to that political model. The upside to the political model is that only the best of the best is going to be at the top. Right.
Right.
And so you have a give and take there, but I really wanted to touch on that, because I think that is a really, really good point. And it's a very poignant question. It's like, what are the factions going to do in D2? How is that going to, because there is this kind of political uneasiness, I guess, or attention, I would even say, where there's constantly, right now in D1, we all have this, they all have a semi-even playing field, right? There's everyone's at the top of the tower, they're at the top of the tower. They're all at the same height, and they're jostling for spaces. Well, all of a sudden the tower gets cut out from underneath them, and depending on where they land, someone might be above the others. Dead Orbit might have a little bit of an edge because they have, like what you were saying, Green, they already have camps established outside the city because they were planning on leaving the city to begin with. Well, now all of a sudden in the resource war, Dead Orbit's ahead. So what are they going to do? Are they going to turn around and support the people, or are they going to use that to kind of further their own ends? And I mean, there's potential for a really cool political. I'm kind of with you, Wallen. I don't want them to do it, but as far as story goes, I could see that being really interesting.
No, I absolutely want them to do it, because it's going to put the factions. Like a lot of people love the factions, right? But to a certain extent, in the lore and in the game, it seems like there's sort of a missed opportunity there.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? And so, what better time if I was a faction leader, say for Future War Cult, for instance, or even Dead Orbit, for instance, and the tower falls, it reinforces my argument 100% that one, the consensus and the speaker can't do their jobs properly. They couldn't foresee the threat. If you're Dead Orbit, it again reinforces your point even more so. The city is hopeless to be defended. The traveler is a dead god that doesn't speak to us anymore. Why are we here? Our city is gone. We have no reason to stay. And so I think in those core concepts, New Monarchy, unfortunately, is going to kind of take the back seat on this one, and maybe in terms of how powerful their argument is, because how are they, from a position of utter weakness, going to argue that we need to recover the Golden Age now when we don't even have a city to stand on?
I think it's going to be even stronger argument, because their argument is to elect somebody who's going to take charge and of the whole thing. Yes, they're based in the city and their thing is to be a part of the city, but their thing is for the people of the city. The city itself is just where they live currently because it is the last standing bastion. If they have to move, I'm sure they're going to. But I think it kind of reinforces New Monarchy in and of itself that, yes, the city has fallen, but we needed a leader to step up. And who's that leader going to be now? Because obviously, like you said, the consensus doesn't work. The speaker doesn't hardly speak. I mean, we don't have a really strong leader leading the group. I think it's just as strong an argument for them as it is for Dead Orbit. And I know Jay keeps putting in the "I told you so."
I'm going to be so disappointed. I'm going to be so disappointed if there's not at least one little clip of a rock from Dead Orbit where it's just like, "I told you so." And like that will make me just happy as a clam. Like if there's just like a little clip somewhere. But no, I agree completely. I think that it's all about political spin. Mm-hmm. You know, like, yes, because, you know, technically, yeah, Wallen, you have a great point. You know, New Monarchy is all about all this, you know, the city protected, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, if this whole thing, you know, if the stuff hits the fan, you know, they could totally spin this and be like, it's these guys were in charge. This is yet another example of what we've been saying, you know, for, I don't know how long they've been here because we don't have really a timeline, but like, I mean, you know, these guys have been here. They didn't protect you. We can protect you better. And I mean, you see, and, you know, going back to Green, you made a comment about this. You see that in the trailer. You see Guardians in New Monarchy gear in the rubble, pulling people out of the rubble, you know, getting pulled out of the rubble themselves. You didn't really see any of the other factions in that clip. Now, granted, that was a short clip. I'm going to, you know, take a contrary step there. I mean, they could have been there, but there was a very big point in showing New Monarchy garbed figures helping citizens kind of not necessarily rebuild, but survive, like get out of the wreckage, pull them out, you know, pull them up, get them back on their feet. You know, if they, I mean, again, political, if they do the right political spin, they could come out ahead, even though they might not have the resources that, you know, Dead Orbit or Future Warcold have because of just coincidence.
Their whole idea, all their bounties and everything has to do with reclaiming Golden Age tech or wanting to rebuild Golden Age tech. So it makes sense that they will argue that, hey, look, the Guardians didn't, like, yes, they're powerful. Yes, they can help us, but they didn't protect us from everything. Maybe we need to try to build up our Golden Age type technology again. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys both make some pretty solid arguments. I definitely see the potential. I think, again, the only like core thing that I want to see happen in Destiny 2 is factions take more of a front seat. Honestly, I feel that there's a great opportunity for really passionate divisions to be made within the gaming community in terms of Destiny, of being like, I'm a part of New Monarchy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
we have watches at GameStop, so you know something's happening.
I want one of those. Pence, don't you listen to that.
I did want to say too, with, you know, kind of transitioning a little bit into the philosophy, I think that's kind of where we're going. It kind of, to me, feels like part of their reason for their uneasiness towards the speaker, and this is just me, but I read them as kind of being like pushing for an industrial revolution, you know, kind of like the because they're very industrialist. They're very, you know, in the city plasteel makers, the fabric makers, the textile factories, you know, all this stuff. And then, like, you have like the speaker and the Guardians, which, you know, if you hold those up, there's a very kind of clear parallel with secularism and then kind of a theocracy, or, you know, kind of a more religious type thing. And I mean, this is a kind of a dangerous line that I'm dancing, but I see them as wanting a separation of those two. And I see them as kind of like, that's kind of where I get the feeling, for, at least for me, for the executors, they want to put more of the industrialist in charge, because from an economic standpoint, and I mean, and look at their ship, what is it? The Visible Hand, which is a clear nod to economics. It's an economic policy. I mean, that's to me, they kind of want to emphasize economics and real, quote unquote, real stuff, whereas the Speaker and the Guardians are kind of more of the mystical aspects. And Wallen, I know you had something.
So I think you're spot on. You're talking about a faction that, if their primary goal is the restoration of the Golden Age, you know, prior to any type of political structure they may put together, the only way they can do that is by putting people in power that are going to be pushers, that are going to be changers, that are going to be reformists.
Sounds very capitalistic of them.
They want individuals in power that are going to do the most good for the entire whole. And if that's strengthening the economy, which definitely needs to happen, especially in a time of war, you need resources coming in, especially if we're trying to retake the city or build the new one. I assume we're going to try to retake the city. It comes back to the core concept of, if the new monarchy is going to be the faction that people turn to in this time of need, they have to showcase that. They have to show that they are not dead orbit. There is no running from this fight. They are not the future war cult where their only concern is to fight. There needs to be a government structure that protects the people, builds them up, but at the same time, it needs to be moving forward. The consensus very clearly doesn't showcase that. We don't move anywhere.
Yeah, I see what you got.
Okay. I just wanted to go back real quick. The Visible Hand is actually a nod to a book. Well, I mean, I'm assuming this is the nod because it's kind of verbatim what the book title is. It's The Visible Hand, The Managerial Revolution in American Business, that was written in 1977 by Alfred D. Chandler Jr. And it's actually an argument for I think it was the argument against the invisible hand of the market by Adam Smith. I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. Yes. He's arguing that Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market theory was actually supplanted by the visible hand of middle management, which then became the most powerful institution in the American economy. So it's talking about, and there's 8 propositions in it. And it's a breakdown of kind of the philosophy of the economy of that particular revolution in the business model that was in the Americas. So I just wanted to kind of touch base, or touch a little bit clearer on that comment that I made. Green.
Kind of going to spin a little bit away from this, but kind of tag it a tiny bit. You're talking about American type capitalism and just the economics that we have currently, our current structure. One of the most interesting things I found when I was digging into different types of monarchies was the elected monarchy type concept, which I kind of went over a little bit earlier. There's a lot of famous examples that we have of the elected monarchy style. I mentioned the Pope earlier for the Catholic Church. Star Wars, it's the Naboo system of government. But the one that actually interested me the most is the fact that we almost had something similar. Well, not even almost. It got shot down pretty quickly. But originally...
Just a little.
Well, Alexander Hamilton was quite the executor in his own right, if you think about him like that.
Right.
Alexander Hamilton actually proposed that we had an elected monarchy, which is very similar to what we have for president. The only thing that they did was they took the concept of an elected monarchy and shortened it down to 4-year terms rather than life sentences or until impeachment is that would either be the end to their presidency or their monarchy. And
right. It's called ruling for good behavior.
Mm-hmm. Which that sounds very much so like what a lot of the new monarchy style is. They wanted an elected monarchy, somebody who can lead them through, not somebody to cycle through all the time. They want somebody to be steady unless they need to be taken out by impeachment or by the people or whatever. I just thought that was a kind of an interesting tie-in to our own American history. And if you're an Alexander Hamilton buff now because of the musical, you're welcome.
Oh, there's a musical? I haven't heard of that.
Oh, I'm going to slap you.
Sorry, I had to do that one. Like that one was too easy.
My wife made me listen to that soundtrack all last summer. I would slap you.
Hamilton's the guy who won the duel, right? Like challenged. Was it? Did he lose? It was Van Buren, wasn't it? Beat Van Buren in the duel, something like that.
I don't even. There's a lot of issues with Alexander Hamilton.
just a few. There wasn't any controversy about him at all. What are you talking about? Music.
I mean, you're talking 200 years. You know, the day and age of the time was a lot different. You know,
right.
Trial by combat doesn't exist anymore in our time. You know,
I think he lost.
Challenge him. Did he?
I'm digging through my notes real quick.
Yeah, he may have lost. But
is honestly arguing this.
I'm not arguing. I'm going to go look it up because now I'm curious.
Yeah, he lost. He died.
Vice.
I think Hamilton's strongest thing, and really the founding fathers' strongest thing is wow, you know, some of them were agrarian, some of them were centralists, most of them were national. Mm-hmm. You know, they believed in a very strong government. In New Monarchy is sort of that idea in a sci-fi spin. They want a strong centralized government with a leader on top that is either elected or put into position that can be all powerful, but at the same time has an ability to manage government effectively while continuing to push people forward. I think the number one thing that I can see a lot of people siding with New Monarchy is the fact that the other factions don't push us in a good direction that benefits all of humanity per se. Dead Orbit, to an extent, I think there is a benefit there. There's an argument to be made, at least. Future War Cult is debatable, but New Monarchy really wants us back in terms of a golden age. And for them to be able to do that, they have a very solid government structure, at least in sort of the grand scheme. To be really fair, though, it's not like democracy is the end all be all in terms of governments. It's just one of the best ones that humanity has come up with so far.
And the concept of democracy can eventually turn into socialism, which is the concept that, was it Marx put? Was that Marx, Karl Marx?
Yeah, it was one of his many arguments.
I mean, we're talking about a sci-fi system, but at the same time, if you look at the factions again, and we're going to be comparing factions all night, I'm assuming, because that's just how this episode has gone so far. New Monarchy is wanting to give the city people hope. Future War Cult, it's war, battle. They're prepping for it in every way, shape, or form. And Dead Orbit is like, we're getting out of here. They're still trying. New Monarchy is still trying to build up the city and hold on to Earth, hold on to what they had. Which, granted, that may be stupid or it may not. According to Gary, it's probably very stupid.
I mean, I think the idea is good, right? Throughout history, you see this, and even in human history, you see this where civilizations have gone through periods of golden ages, and they almost romanticize them to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Rome is a great example. Rome during the golden age was a pinnacle of civilization in terms of how people tend to romanticize it to being this end all be all best thing in the world. But when you really dive into it, it isn't the greatest thing in the world. There was a lot of death, a lot of debauchery, a lot of slavery, not of the greatest characteristics of humanity.
Yeah, but our own system is based highly on the Roman system.
Well, and I think that's part of the progression of human evolution in a political sphere, is that we tend to, in general, if you back up and you look at a big picture of the progress of the political spheres and the political, growth of humanity in general, we tend to go up. I mean, like, yes, there are dips, and there are points in which you can totally argue that. But in the big picture, we learn from the past, right? We do tend to kind of see, Rome is a great example. I'm not going to argue there were terrible things done in the height of Roman power that get glossed over. I mean, hell, there were terrible things done in, pick any culture out there that get glossed over.
Even our own American
right.
history.
I mean, yeah. I mean, geez, yeah. But I mean, the Mongols is another example. Genghis Khan is like, Genghis Khan is this, like, just, I wouldn't say he's romanticized, but I mean, like, there's these people who they claim he's like the most, one of the most influential people, blah, blah, blah. If you actually look at the history of what Khan did during battles, I mean, it puts pretty much anything in modern warfare to shame. Like, right. I'm talking all the way back to World War I. Like, it makes the Holocaust look like nothing. And yes, Shay and chat, yes. If you have any questions about this, Dan Carlin does an amazing episode on Hardcore History about the Mongols. And he makes this point very well. But what kind of the cool thing here to me is like the new monarchy, and I kind of mentioned this to Green before, is also a bit of a nod to there is an actual group of monarchs that was deemed the new monarchs. It was a concept that was developed back in the first half of the 20th century that actually characterized the 15th century European rulers who were responsible for really unifying their respective nations. And they, in doing so, they created stable and centralized governments. And so, like, basically chronologically, these monarchs, when they kind of talk about the new monarchs, you have John I of Portugal, Charles VII of France, Louis XI of France, Isabella I the Castile, Ferdinand II of Aragon, with the whole Reconquista, that whole thing. And then finally Henry VII of England, who, I mean, say what you will about Henry of England, he ended the War of the Roses. He brought England from bankruptcy all the way back into prosperity. I mean, he completely unified England politically by, again, kind of one of those things that gets glossed over, eliminating potential competitors. Like, I mean, he was pretty unforgiving there. But the achievements of the new monarchy as a whole group really kind of, there is about 6 points that they kind of argue here. And it says that they limited the power of the feudal aristocracy. They created efficient centralized systems of taxation. They maintained a standing army that was loyal to the monarch, not to the throne, which is, if you know anything about Roman history, that's a really important thing. And then they encouraged some sense of national identity. It wasn't nationalism, but it was on the way to nationalism. They definitely fostered trade, between internal and external, so between each other and within their own countries. And they enforced religious unity within their countries. So, like, basically these new monarchs paved the way to that growth. And, Green, you said that kind of a little bit ago. We have a lot of what we have built, based off pieces of the Romans. Well, yeah, and then you have the Holy Roman Empire, which was kind of a step, you had the Roman Empire, you had the Roman Republic, you had the Holy Roman Empire, you had, the whole Dark Ages, which just kind of messed everything up. But then we came back and we finally learned how to read. Thank you, Irish people. We got all that back, and then, we pick and choose pieces of your past, and, you do that even in your own life, I as a psychology major, you read tons of studies about how people who have come from just horrible backgrounds have come out and they're some of the best people out there. It's because we have, as a human, new monarchy kind of points to this piece of us in our psychology where we look at the past and we kind of pick and choose which pieces to bring forward. And I think that's kind of what, I see with, any of the factions is they're kind of picking and choosing the history that they research. Dead Orbit is the whole pragmatistic, nihilistic, this was all a miracle and we can't count on it happening again. Future War Cult is like, oh crap. Like we thought it was bad before. It's just going to keep getting, it's either going to stay the same or it's going to get worse, and we need to prepare. And New Monarchy is kind of that going back and saying, look, this is where we were. We got knocked down, yes, but we can rise again. And so I think in their own way, each faction is very positive in the way that they want to help, but it's just the means of helping that I think is completely different. Green, I know you have something in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just talking about how we kind of, New Monarchy has a very patchwork structure based off of a lot of things that we see modern day politics and whatnot. But you have to think about it. We were almost completely wiped out in the Dark Ages. Like, humanity was nearly wiped out, except for a few survivors who ended up traveling to, like, the city, what eventually became the city, or the European Dead Zone area that we know about. It's interesting that as a tribal, if you think about how tribal structures build and how tribal politics work, you always have the strongest leader leads the group. And that kind of makes me feel that that's kind of where we're leading to. It may not be there as noble as basing it off of Roman or Holy Roman Empire or anybody, British, Canadian, whoever. I don't think it's necessarily that, because if you look at some of the quotes from, what's his name, the Cryptarch guy, Rahul, where he talks about Plutarch and all these ancient ones, they don't know much about our actual history. It's been pretty much wiped out in a lot of ways. They're recovering it, but it's interesting to think that they would develop something that's similar in structure to like a guild political structure. I'm trying to think if it's France or if it was Italy that had kind of the guild politics that were really, really heavy. Everything.
They kind of both did, but Italy was much more cutthroat about it. Like, I mean, medieval Europe kind of had a guild structure within the feudalism of it, but Italy was definitely, you had families and houses much more prevalent. especially in what's that?
Was it based off of the families, or was it based off the merchants and the guilds and the glass blowers and stuff, like divided up by that?
I mean, yes, in the way, I mean, it's kind of a chicken egg thing, because the families kind of like bankers, right? Your family would be a family of bankers. So your family would be a family of fur traders, or of, I mean, pick a profession. That's really kind of what it was. So your family was known for a specific trade, and that trade would then allow, a certain amount of prestige. Like, obviously bankers, especially in Italy, bankers were somewhat respected, and they were very powerful because that was kind of, they knew what they were doing, and they were politically very, very acute, like very, very aware of everything by the nature of what they were doing at that time. And then like you had, I mean, like traders and not traitors, traders, who would travel the country and even outside the country. And that was also kind of yes, is the answer. It was based in family and business, because the family
were the business,
and the business was the family. Now, you also had that's where a lot of like political marriages between families was a very big deal, because you could have someone kind of jumping businesses or marrying into businesses and merging businesses. That's where you get that political aspect of marriages. Was especially in the financial political families. That was very, very much a very common thing.
So speaking of kind of like a fiefdom types thing, New Monarchy doesn't have anything that relates to a fiefdom or a fiefdom that I can think of. Can you guys think of anything that does that?
I mean, I just don't think that there's enough information really in terms of their government structure beyond it being a monarchy, and monarchs are typically tied to feudalism. Beyond that, I don't think that there's really enough information to really say what is the closest correlation in terms of what these guys are about in their government structure. Ideally, that's explained a lot more in Destiny 2. I hope we get more information. The one thing that I've always had an issue with Destiny lore is that there are a lot of great things that you can pull from, but a lot of it you're inferring. You're not really basing it on any concrete thing. And while it doesn't mean any type of idea is necessarily wrong, and the passion behind it is excellent, I think it's one of those things that if we did get a very concrete, this is what these factions are, this is who they're backed by, this is what their ultimate goals are, and not sort of be this very subtle information that's being dropped at us, I think we're going to have a much clearer idea in terms of what faction means what to us personally.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. I mean, I think the closest, excuse me, the most concrete thing, I think of all the factions, the new Monarchy kind of has some of the most concrete because we actually get the tenets of the new Monarchy.
Right,
Whereas,
we haven't read those yet.
Well, I mean, and the only reason I bring them up is because, like, we know that the other factions have tenets, but we don't know what really they are. They, like Dead Orbit, we know like they have the one tenet that out our future lies out beyond the stars, or out among the stars. Yeah, and then Future Warcult is basically war without end. But I mean, is that the only tenet? Like, we don't have like a listing of tenets. Whereas with the new Monarchy, we do. We have that in Ghost Fragment, New Monarchy in green. I'm gonna tap out because my throat's about to die.
Okay. Ghost Fragment, New Monarchy. The 7 tenets of the New Monarchy. 1. To secure our walls against the enemy without. 2. To secure the rights and liberties of every upstanding citizen. 3. To sponsor the sciences of the city, and to salvage the ruins beyond, so that our golden age might be reborn. 4. To support the Guardian Orders by leading the city logical. 5. To support the natural harmony of the city, and to actively dissuade any group or individual that might disrupt that harmony. 6. To hold all individuals, compacts, and alliances to the highest standards of productivity and right behavior. 7. 2. By vote of the consensus, abolish the consensus, and transfer ultimate power in order that the rights and liberties of all citizens be secured to a single sovereign of unimpeachable character. Okay, so I know that number 7 gets flack. That everybody says that's like a communism thing, or like that just proves that they're evil and they're just trying to take. I don't think so. I think that yes, it sways the fact that they want somebody to take charge and lead, but I don't think it means that they want them to be all powerful. They just want that person, whoever the leader is, to be incredibly good. They don't want that person to be a monarch that rules by fist, but rules with the grace of the people involved. But that's my whole little spiel about that. So people who say it's a communism thing, back off. It's not.
No, I don't think it's really close to communism. I think the 7 tenet, to by vote of the consensus, abolish the consensus. I mean, that speaks to, it's not necessarily a power grab. And while there may be a power grab that happens at a certain point, their at least core tenet asks that the consensus votes for the consensus to end. I think that's how they want to take power. They want to wrest it through a democratic mean by having the people say, this is what we want. Not forcing it upon them, but having them choose it.
Right.
That speaks incredibly powerful for a faction to attract individuals too. I think if we had more information about the faction wars, I think it would explain why there's hesitation for, say, Zavala to not throw his hand in, or for other Guardians to not rise up and overtake the city in some manner. There's information about Lysander in the Concordat where he legitimately tried some type of rebellion against the Speaker. And the New Monarchy was one of the factions that directly opposed him.
It was the faction that directly opposed him in Bannerfall, because that's in Ghost Fragment. Is it Ghost Fragment Bannerfall?
I think it is. It is the Bannerfall one.
Well, and then if you are like me and just refuse to play PvP when you get put in PvP, you can go walk around Bannerfall, and like the two factions that are present is New Monarchy, and then the green Titan Smash, or the green Hulk Smash logo, which is basically the fist coming down. I don't know if it's supposed to be a fist, but it really looks like a fist pushing down. So I've always called it a fist, but it's the Concordat's logo. And the cool thing about Bannerfall, just kind of a little tangent there, is if you actually go into the different bases or halls or whatever you want to call them, the New Monarchy side has a library. And then if you go over to the Concordat side, they're building a ship. They also have imprisoned a sweeper bot. It's very sad.
Yeah.
That's sad. That is very sad.
It's sad. It's like I found that and I was like, oh, you poor thing. I can't even get to you. So, but yeah, no, that was Bannerfall.
Not to relitigate something we've talked about before, but I'm kind of curious to get Will's take on it. What do you think, or do you think we're going to see any of the Concordat come back because of the Lysander's Cry sparrow that we got before?
Oh God, I hope so. I honestly,
yeah,
I hope so.
Oh man, I think that goes into do I want them to, or do I hope for the storyline that they do?
That'd be so cool if they came back and
like, do I want them to? No, but that's because I hate the Concordat. But do I see it as being a really awesome potential for a story hook? Yes. Which means I'm kind of at war, because like if I was going to be speaking from like inside the game world, I would say, no, I don't want them to come back. They already caused the problem. They need to go away. But if I'm looking at it from like a gameplay thing, yeah, a couple nerds play and chat is like, well, we're getting a DLC from someone who is kind of connected to the Concordat.
Also,
not very positively
to everybody.
Well, I mean, yes, Osiris is connected to all because, whatever, he's an amazing figure that should be respected. But, we have in the Osiris card a direct connection to the Concordat, and it's actually and I think you posted the Reddit post that made this point. It's actually one of the few comments about the Concordat that we got that was not from New Monarchy. Like everything we know about the Concordat is pretty much through the eyes of New Monarchy. If I remember,
the victor writes the history.
I mean, Napoleon had a point there. He was short and he had a little man syndrome, but he had a point on that one. Okay, I mean. But I did find that kind of interesting because, I mean, it is kind of one of the arguably, and even that is from the speaker's point of view. So I couldn't say it's unbiased, but everything that we know about New Monarchy is from propaganda, or everything we know about the Concordat is from the propaganda of New Monarchy. And even Ikora even made a comment about how if she had her way, it would be struck from everything. Like she doesn't want even the name of was it Lysander? Was it just the name of Lysander, or was it the name of the I can't remember, but Ikora has a comment about how she would even want his reference struck completely because she doesn't.
We had that happen to in Destiny lore.
The awesome Sunbreakers.
Well, not only them. It's happened to quite a few people.
No, Chris.
No, Chris.
Oh, I will find a way to bring certain people into pretty much every podcast if I can.
You haven't done the Osiris connection in a while.
I haven't had to. Every time I've been like, oh, that's an aside. Someone else makes a comment. I'm like, all right, cool. My quota is met. He is in this episode.
The Reddit post that you're talking about, it's a pretty loose connection.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a fun thought game to play. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be true or proven true, but like we've been saying, we don't have enough information about the factions or the history of the factions for all intents and purposes to really be saying anything conclusively. But if Osiris was tied to the Concordat or tied to New Monarchy or just started his own faction, that would be a fun thing.
Well, he kind of did. I mean, he kind of
Is it a faction or is it a cult?
I don't know how to answer that without pissing off like both sides of the coin on that one.
That's why I asked it.
Yes.
We've kind of been talking about this a little bit. What role do you want to see the factions play in D2? Like, if you had your ideals set up story-wise for the factions or mechanics-wise for the factions, for that, how we interact with them or how we interact to help them or whatnot, what would you want them to do for Destiny 2?
Wallen, I'll let you take that one first.
I mean, that's tough. I'd say it's got to be an extension of what we currently do, but way more in depth. So a lot of the bounties, for example, it was mentioned earlier that New Monarchy's bounties are resource gathering in terms. Some of the future war cult ones are the same. They all sort of share the same similarities in terms of you side with one faction, and typically you either gather resources, take out this target, do something. I think it should be expanded to a certain sense, is that during the final hours, taking the drive to retake the city, you should have an opportunity to maybe side with a faction that puts the flag on the city and retakes it. That is your faction for the foreseeable future, and there is ideally some sort of dig or nod to a potential future faction war after the recovery. I'd love to see the factions take a primary front seat, not a back seat where we're sponsored by them, and we're like NASCARs and we just put their decals on us. I want them to see like a legit, I'm part of New Monarchy. Anyone future war cold or anyone dead orbit, I'm against you now. We got to this point with the city. We failed because of what your X faction did, really casting the blame on the other faction. Something like that, I think would be super, super dope. Like a Faction Wars 2 kind of thing, maybe future DLC down the line, something like that. But ideally, you side with the faction. It means a little bit more than you get loot from them.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Blue?
I mean, I'm actually really, and I figured this would be the case. I'm on board with that as well. I mean, I know Justin and I have said this a number of times before. I know Guardian Radio, they've talked about it too. I know Mesa especially. But I think that, going, and this is kind of breaking fourth wall, but going into a next gen situation, I just threw an article over in Discord that's talking about the whole no consoles aren't getting 60 frames a second because this opens up, bigger areas, more robust areas. I'm hoping, if on my pipe dream list, as far as factions are concerned, I kind of want the same thing along the lines of what Wallen's saying, but I would even love it. Like, okay, so we know the main social space is the farm, right? Mm-hmm. What if we had a competition between the factions? All the Guardians who are aligned with this faction or that faction, you throughout the week or throughout, a certain amount of time, you are responsible for accruing points by doing different public events, doing Crucible events, take your pick, assign points to different things. At the end of the time period, they close the gate and they say, faction, future war cult, you won. And then for the next 2 weeks, I have to deal with your rainbow colors every time I go to the farm. Or even like you guys get like a boot, like I see in chat, a couple nerds, a one on each planet, and allegiance to that faction grants bonus on gathering and XP on that planet. I mean, XP, you kind of get touchy there, but I mean, you'd have to lock down the jumping from faction to faction a bit more, but I personally don't have a problem. I've never left the faction that I'm in, but but I know people who have who jump from faction to faction, for instance, for the exotic quest item, right? Or certain people who like the different weapon rolls or whatever. You'd have to address that, and that's obviously something that game could be potentially annoying to people who are obsessive compulsive about collecting everything. But I mean, geez, if we could get something where the world actually changes, like they're talking about like this whole people are going to come and go from the farm. Hell, how about we just change the flag at the top of the farm, you know, based off a certain week's worth of material. Like the first week of every month is faction. I mean, you could even call it faction wars. I mean, even though it probably would drive most of us in the lore community insane. But I mean, you know, because I mean, there's so many more connotations there than just the whole thing. But I mean, like it would bring to mind, or like do something like faction Crucible, where your control matches are actually you're actually planting the flag of your faction. It's not ABC. It's actually, you know, the flag, that animation is the faction of that particular team. There's just so many cool things that they could do in game. I mean, that just, I don't know, for me to increase the awareness of factions, and, you know, kind of what Wallen's saying, put them in the forefront of like, no, we are not coming to a city and being a part of it. We are now on the forefront and the front line of rebuilding our home. And how do we want to build that? Right. You know,
right. I mean, make them have a pivotal consequence to the game itself. Granted, if everyone's kind of divided up in factions like they tend to be right now, it will kind of be a balance with everyone doing things. But having a faction war, see, I have mixed feelings about having faction wars where it's like, oh, literally competing against each other, because I feel that that's kind of in some ways against what Bungie wants us to do, because I think Bungie wants everyone to kind of eventually, even if it doesn't happen in D2, they might do a faction war right now, but eventually have everybody kind of come together in Kumbaya at the end, because that seems like a very Bungie thing to do. Like, hey, yes, we have our differences. Let's hug and make up. And now I'm starting.
Well, I don't want to hug and make up, but I can see them coming back and being like, hey, I'm not it. Okay. So I have Defenders on my mind because I just finished the season today. And by the way, if you haven't watched it yet, you need to fix that hole in your life immediately. But like the characters, it's kind of like the characters in Defenders. They're working together very grudgingly. And you can tell, like, Luke Cage constantly, his number one quote is, I'm not giving you a hug. Like every time they're like, hey, we're a team. Don't use that word. Like it's like, they're completely separate people. Right. But they come together because the need is so great. And I can see Destiny or Bungie, I can see Bungie pulling that and being like, no, we know you hate each other, but if you don't work together, you will not win. Like, this is not going to matter. I can see that message being sent.
Yeah, and I kind of get how they've sort of done that already with the way that we've just gathered materials for everybody, and it doesn't action you are in. If you're doing a bounty, you can get a Dead Orbit bounty if you're in Future War Cult. It doesn't matter what colors you're wearing. And I agree with Wallen and you both in the fact that I want there to be some sort of in-game consequence is not the right word, like reaction to what I do in my faction. I want to see something. I want to see a reason for what I'm doing in my faction. Like, why am I in New Monarchy? So I can get flack from everybody because everyone thinks I'm just in a governmental.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
I was fighting so hard from just.
I'm sorry.
No. I get it. I mean, that's kind of the reason why I've dreaded tonight, because we don't see the good that our faction does. We just have the philosophy of what our faction should be doing, but we don't see it in game. We really don't. We don't see anything. All we are this upper echelon, this social class that is above everybody, that is a warrior class that is separate from everyone. And we've argued about this before, how we don't see anybody in the city, hardly. I mean, the only people we see from the city we don't go down there. Now, granted, we are going to go down there and it's going to be trashed. But if we have more of a reaction for what we do with our faction based on what we need for the faction, have me go into the city and rescue for New Monarchy. Have me go do something if I was in Dead Orbit for some reason. Have me go find something off planet and set up a new colony. I want it to be important in game. I don't want it to just be, oh, you need to collect this many spin metal.
Right. Or if you do collect that many spin metal, like actually don't just collect it, but actually have to like deliver it somewhere, or, you know, have it be more involved, or even just be like, if I'm wearing Dead Orbit colors, don't give me New Monarchy bounties, you know, like have a segregation based off the player, which I understand that can get really dicey from a programming standpoint, but I could totally, I mean, oh God, man, if they could put the factions in the forefront, that would be.
They should up the stakes, though. You know, I get where Bungie's coming from in terms of it. You know, the exotic quest, right?
Right.
Everyone wants the exotics. I totally understand that side, but I feel like it would mean a lot more to being with a certain faction if those were faction exclusive. If you had exclusivity behind this faction, it would mean people had to legitimately choose something. You can't get everything, and I think that. In a lot of MMOs nowadays, this is, or even just games in general, this concept is lost, that the player should be able to get everything. He should be able to be given everything. I think that to a certain extent, if you want to tie people to a certain faction and that faction's philosophy, you want to give them sweet loot that only they can get if they're at that faction. And maybe it's only vanity stuff. You know, I don't think it should be weapons, because you can go really deep into like unbalances and stuff like that.
God.
Like, you know, let New Monarchy gets the new last word or the new thorn, and the rest of the factions get bolt action sniper rifles that are terrible hit detection. You know what I mean? Like that would be terrible.
Hey, I love my hung jury. Triple tap all the way.
I really want something like this.
Well, and
that's fine.
There's a couple nerds in chat is pointing out, you know, what if you have NPCs in the Wildlands that would react differently depending on your alliance?
Ooh, that
would be, because I mean, we have heard them talking about like, you know, somewhat of a dynamic Discord. I don't know how we're going to talk because we don't talk, but you know, the idea there being that, you know, depending on the colors that you're wearing or the alliance that you have, because I mean, I'm assuming they're going to have something similar to the faction badge that we have in today's game. I mean, I would assume they continue that kind of model, but that would be nice.
That right off the beginning. Do you think we'll have factions at the beginning of D2? Or are we going to have to work our way into it?
I hope we do. I think the idea of giving players the ability, like the second they reach the farm.
I was going to say, I think as soon as we reach the farm, we should. I don't think, you know, obviously before we reach the farm. I don't know. I mean, again, since we're not being able to carry anything forward.
Right. But we didn't get any faction. Like we couldn't join a faction until I think level 5 in D1. You couldn't even, I mean, you could interact with them, but you couldn't join them until you did the PvP stuff.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because it was locked behind Crucible. That's right. Yeah.
I honestly don't remember. That was
that's what I was like. I'm going off of what Green's saying, because
that was a long time ago for me. So.
I've slept since then
because I'm re-recording everything, so it's like,
oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Interesting.
There's just so many. There's so many, like, and I'm spoiled when it comes to this type of like the reactions of NPCs and stuff, because like, you know, playing in Elder Scrolls or any of the giant RPGs that I kind of go to when I get bored, that's very important. Like, you know, that if you do something, it has repercussions throughout the world. Especially if you play modded versions of those games, like you could wipe out towns by making the wrong decision. And like literally, like at Fallout 3, you wipe out a town, it's gone. Like if there's a quest that you needed that town for, you're SOL. Like if you don't structure things right. So, you know, for me, yeah, I'm thinking of the main town, but I mean, for me, the idea of being like, no, I'm going to choose this faction. And like, as long my one qualifier is like, as long as they're upfront about it, you know, like, I mean, as long as they're like, hey, no, we're factions, you know, you get certain amount of times that you can change factions. You know, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I think that'd be awesome. I think, and I mean, I'm on board with, I have a whatever item. I don't think it needs to be. I think aesthetic item would be fine with me, but like an item that I know, I have because of my allegiance to this faction for a certain amount of time, or maybe that's how they do it. Maybe that's how they do certain items is you have to be a member of the faction for X amount of months,
Yeah.
I totally, or X amount of refreshes, cause I think that's what right now, isn't it? Every refresh you can change.
Yeah. Once a week.
Okay. So say you can be, you've proven your loyalty for 25 refreshes, however they want to coin that in game. Here's your reward. I'm done. I'm on board with that. Because I'll get dead orbits, and that's the only one I'll get anyway. So it's like that's why I don't know the refresh rate, because I was like, give me my token and I'm good to go. I think technically I have like level 3 on Future War Cult and New Monarchy on my hunter.
I did level up all 3 of them just because I think that was part of one of the books to complete. Like if you completed up to like level 10 or 20, whatever it was for each of the factions, you got one of the book things unlocked. I can't remember if it was Age of Triumph or what, but
I did it because when I started Destiny, I had OCD about completing everything. Destiny cured me of that problem.
Oh, so here I have a little OCD side story that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So Julie has gotten really hooked on Kingdom Hearts. Like, she's played more video games in the past week. My wife doesn't play video games. She's played Kingdom Hearts more than I've played anything else this last week that we've been in Colorado. And she will not move on from a section until she gets all the chest. And it's driving her crazy because in Traverse Town, you can't get to all the chest when you're first level. So she's been trying to jump. I finally convinced her to move on to a second one. She could go back later and get them. But dear God, she spent 3 hours trying to get a chest. Side story over.
Dedication.
It's like that's face meet wall. Like that's
yeah. It's gamer's wife who doesn't play games.
Oh man,
it's pretty funny.
I mean, did you want to touch on anything else before we jumped to dispatches, or?
I don't think so. I'm actually really happy about how this episode has turned out.
I told you it wouldn't be too bad.
I know. I did have to shut somebody down at the beginning on chat, just like, hey, no, we're not trashing people tonight. Oh. It's not a trashing thing, but I'm really glad how it turned out, how it's still, it's a political thing, but it's a fairly balanced review removed. And then I'll still get bashed in the chat. It's fine. I don't care. But seriously, New Monarchy. Yes.
All right. Well, are you okay if we jump to dispatches real fast?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, perfect. Here we go.
Dispatches from the wilds.
All right. Well, we actually got a couple dispatches. One of them is related to tonight's chat, and then 2 of them are actually feedbacks from earlier, or the responses to earlier conversations that we had. I'm going to grab the first. Let me make sure I have them in order. Or actually, Green, why don't you grab Millie's, and I'm going to read Crashes, because Crashes is more towards me.
Mm-hmm. Too bad Justin isn't here.
I know. That's what I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this one's.
So this is from Millimeter Mason, and he or she says, I can't get a hold of Justin on Twitter because I don't have a Twitter. I will try to hunt you down on Facebook though, Justin. Anyway.
Do it.
If I would have lost the bowling match, I would have had to put on makeup and my girlfriend's clothes. I don't know how well that would have worked considering I'm 6'3" and she's 5'3". As you can tell, there was no way I was going to lose that. Thanks for reading my story on the show. You guys are the bomb. And this is in response to, well, he told the story last week Didn't
This was the striker that he won a bet with his girlfriend in bowling, and she had to play 3 hours of Destiny, and so
Striker.
he put her on striker in like level 4 patrol because he's like, I'm not gonna make you do anything, but he's a hunter, and so he was like, I'm gonna get you used to the controls, and then we'll move you up to the hunter because whatever. And now his girlfriend's a dedicated striker titan. And of course we had to ask, we were like, what was the opposing side of this bet if you hadn't won? So that is,
I'm glad he came back and told
that
us
is
what it was.
amazing.
That's pretty, I actually saw a Reddit post where somebody was standing on the side of the road with a sign saying, I don't need money or help or anything like that. I just lost a bet to somebody, like a football team losing, and he's standing on the side with a dress and makeup on. It's like, oh man.
Sports ball. It's rough.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this next one is from Crash Gordon 8800. And actually, I really like this one. That's why this is actually, I was kind of debating whether or not including this or just responding, but I really like the response. And this is in response to the Fist of Havoc debate that we had with Zavala, or about Zavala, not with Zavala, about Zavala last. Cool. That would be really scary. He says, hello, FFC. I have a possible explanation for Zavala using Fist of Havoc twice back-to-back in the trailer scene you were debating last week. If we stick with the assumption that there were standard Destiny 1 supers and have nothing to do with the Destiny 2 roaming Fist of Havoc, the back-to-back usage could be explained by Orbs of Light. While I don't believe orbs have ever been shown in any trailers or cutscenes, and I could not find them mentioned in any Grimoire cards, there are a few bounties and quest steps that reference their effects. The best example is probably the Perpetual Light bounty. Create lights for others and you create it for yourself. Embrace this cycle and together we'll push the darkness back. And that's a quote from Commander Zavala. I would argue that while the orbs themselves could be a game mechanic, they represent a lore-consistent effect, a guardian's use of the light empowering other guardians. In the large-scale battle seen in the trailer, Zavala easily could have charged another super that quickly, lots of orbs on the ground, and I can't recall much, if any, discussion of Orbs of Light on the podcast and would be very interested to hear your take. Thank you. And that's from Crash Gordon 8800. I actually really like that because that actually makes sense in my head.
It does, but the only thing is you don't see any other Guardian using a super at that point in the trailer. So there must have, it would be a really cool thing if there was orbs already there, but I don't remember seeing any other Guardian using their super in there. And I could send you the video. I've still got it downloaded.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to go watch it again because I'm trying to think. Well, and what are your thoughts on the Fist of Havoc changing into a roaming super?
I think it's cool. Mechanically wise, lore wise, I've always looked at light as sort of being this. I hate to cherry pick this in a way, but like I look at it sort of like the Force from Star Wars. That it is a force that is it's physical or can be made physical, but really your imagination is the limitation. So while there may be certain subclasses, Guardians before they became Guardians were called Risen, and there was this mishmash of different abilities being used. It wasn't until later that subclasses really came about. So I think Guardians have really almost unlimited ability in terms of what they can manifest and what they can do. I think what we actually see is more of gameplay limitations than anything. Like if you really could do anything you wanted to, it would be the greatest game of all time, but it's obviously mechanically not possible.
Right. No, that makes sense.
But lore wise, I think it again is just a manifestation of your ability to do something based on your connection to the light.
I like it. I will accept that.
Thank you.
No, it's like, it was one of the things that like I watched the trailer and that was like the one piece of it that was just like, I'm twitching my head. I'm like, but but it's like I was like I'll accept it. I'll gloss over it because it's really not that big of a deal,
Right.
but it kind of is at the same time.
We talked last week. I mean, if you manifest it in such a way where you save some of that energy for a later strike, and I mean, we kind of talked about that within how Blade Dancers and Stormcallers use theirs too.
Right,
But
right. I guess the biggest debate that I have, or the biggest issue I have with that whole view of it is, again, kind of going back to the debate that we had last time was, Zavala is the one that's also teaching all the Titans. He's kind of he is the mentor of all the Titans. And so like, if he is capable of multiple fists of havoc, how do you fit that in the lore without kind of just basically being like, okay, look, it's a game mechanic. You're just going to have to deal with it. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah. So, and I mean, yeah, it's entirely possible too, that they could have just, I don't know. I always view this is the problem with some soft retcons.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, what about the next one? Wallen, I know you had that one.
Yeah, so this one comes from Infested Potato.
Yep.
A man after my own heart here with the potato, so I'm a fan. But he brings us sort of like this speech, calls it title Promise of the Monarchy. Order and justice. Under these guidelines and our tenets, the city thrives and prospers, its citizens lawful and kind. Many join in our common goal of rebuilding what we have lost. Those who would oppose that peace and order, thou that wish to flee or sow despair, shall be put to the flame and sword. We were called to do it before, and we won't hesitate if the call comes again. As the Guardians secure the wall and the wilds beyond, we shall secure our city, block by block, street by street, home by home. Humanity must unite if we hope to survive under one banner, under one ruler. Our greatest achievements and hopes are yet to come, but only together will we ever have hope of reaching them. Peace, justice, order, at any cost. Dude's got a way with words. I like that.
Awesome. Potatoes.
Awesome. You should get the guy to write some of my my lore videos for me.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't. He'll jump on that one. He sends us these every week for different topics. So he's promised the next one is going to be a doozy.
That's awesome. He definitely got a great sense of vernacular there. I'm envious of his ability to do some of that stuff. So props to him.
All right, guys. Let's go into some shout outs. Wallen, I'm going to let you lead the charge.
Yeah, I just want to say the entire podcast is really interesting. The whole concept of New Monarchy and the factions in general is something dope. I just hope we see it explored more for Destiny 2. I really appreciate you both having me on for this opportunity. It's awesome to be able to talk to passionate individuals that are leaders in the community. Something that I'm just happy at this point that I'm still a part of the Destiny community, and I can still at least get in here occasionally and have a good quality conversation. So I really appreciate that, guys. Really do. Thank you.
Definitely. We'll have to make sure to keep you in on the podcast.
Yes. I'm cool with that.
Awesome. Green, what about you?
Yeah, just thanking you, Sir Wallen. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the show, you were actually the first one that I ever watched the lore videos for, because I really liked how you broke down things, and then you would do these readings, kind of like you just read Infested Potatoes thing, and I was just like, I was a performance major in college. This is great. I like it when you do this kind of thing. So I want to thank you for coming on here and just letting us pick your brain on some of these things, because I know you've dove into some of these subjects as well. So thank you for coming on with us. We really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, no problem. It's humbling to hear stuff like that. So I really appreciate it. But yeah, this is awesome to do.
Yeah. My last shout out is to Book Club. I put up the new poll for next month. There's 10 options. I put 5. like first books in the series type options, including, I think I put Game of Thrones on there because I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. Also 5 of our standards. Hey,
really?
Someone
Really?
asked, if someone asked, I put it on there. I'm an equal opportunity sadist, okay?
I'm just trying to think how you're gonna get through book 1 in 1 month. All right, guys. Read 2,000 pages on the first week.
I'm just going to be listening to the audiobook because I have that already. Because, hey, speaking of audiobook,
I just realized. I'll talk about that. So going forward, and I promise I'm gonna get better. This week's been a full one. For those who probably have not figured it out, I don't know how you haven't figured it out. I'm kind of sick. So I'm the fact that I'm able to still speak at this point, I'm really happy with myself. We actually got confirmation early. Was it yesterday?
Last week.
Well,
for
Audible,
it was last week. Audible was Monday.
Okay. My days have blended together this week. So we have now actually been sponsored. We are affiliated with Loot Crate and Audible. I will be getting better at announcing these before the show. So I'm gonna I will try to start next week with this. But yes, so when we start doing the book club, we will talk about this probably in depth in the book club, especially at the beginning of each month. And then obviously Loot Crate, we have that information all on the website. We talked about this a while back. I'm trying to think when I posted that, but we talked about it and we got really humbling feedback. And Wallen, you kind of said that it's all humbling to hear this. I was actually expecting like a little bit of like, oh well, we don't really care, but we don't really want it. No, you guys have all been 100% on board with it, and we really appreciate it. It's very, very humbling to hear some of the things that were given back to us as feedback. So yeah, we have gotten confirmation from Loot Crate and from Audible that that we're affiliated with them. We can offer you guys deals. We have that information on the support page of the website. If you're curious about that has all the links and everything on that. Either one, Loot Crate, I think is, if for new subscriptions, we get 10% off for everyone. And then Audible, we are able to give a free month or 30 days for free. Your first 30 days are free. And then there's also a free audiobook included in that package. And so all that is through the affiliate link. And, obviously all that is kind of feedback based on using those links. If you have any questions, as usual, don't hesitate to shoot me a question or shoot me an email, shoot me a DM on Discord, where I'm pretty much 24/7 on there. Even though Green and Kashin are yelling at me to sleep, I don't really listen to them. But yeah, and then for Twitter, for the Ask FFC hashtag, next week, you guys probably noticed we did not have a poll up this weekend. We're not going to have a poll up next weekend either, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 2 kind of special episodes. Next week, we're going to be talking about memories of Destiny 1. We're going to call it, I think it's the final Destiny memories. What I'm planning on doing is I want to get feedback. Yeah, Green. I want to get feedback from everyone. I want you guys to send in your best memories. Try to keep them somewhat succinct. I mean, you can definitely write as much as you want. We love reading. I will read every single one of them.
We might summarize them on.
We might summarize most of them if it gets a little out of hand. And the other thing is I'm going to try to kind of put a recap of the episode, or not the episode, the series. That's a tall order, and I know that a lot of people in the lore community are already doing it. I know Bife is doing it.
An hour and 45 minutes of recording.
He's so pissed. He's so pissed. He's like he's on like the third iteration of rendering that video. Wallen, are you doing a Destiny 1 summary video?
So I've actually I've already kind of done one. It's like a short abridged version. I did sort of like the very important points that need to be covered. Unfortunately, my YouTube channel has taken like back for a lot of the things that so an hour-long video, he's the man. You know what I mean? I'm 100% going to support him, but that is not in the cards for me.
Yeah. It was like, I think that was the edited version. So I don't even want to know.
His videos
what the unedited version was.
Him and Malin have. I remember watching them. I remember watching Malin start a lot of his videos.
Oh yeah.
And both their videos are just awesome. Right. They legitimately, they are so damn good. So, if they do an hour long, 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. You're in for an awesome treat.
Oh, I mean, when you record something, if you're going to record it and do a good job, every hour that you put in there, you're probably putting 3 to 5 hours of actual work into that.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah. But so I know Bife's doing one. I know Mylan's doing one. Ishtar has a very good summary from Baxter up on theirs. I just blanked on it. It's not Commons. It's
on the it is the Ishtar Commons. Is their forum site.
No, what's their blog site? The errata?
Yeah.
Okay, I just blanked on that. The blog.
I am too.
It's not Commons. I've been dealing with Commons a lot. That's why I keep thinking it's Commons. It's not. So they have a really good summary. We have been the reason I'm kind of talking about this is we have been asked to do a kind of a summary of it. So I'm going to try to very briefly at maybe the beginning of the episode go through just like high points of it. But I will definitely be linking all these different sources. If they're up and available to be linked, I will be linking them in those show notes. And then following that, we are going to be doing the return of Yes. For those of you who are new to the community and do not know the mystical nature of Yes, I don't even know where to begin to explain what Yes is.
Can you do the backstory?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to. I'm like, how do I summarize the Yes backstory?
Okay, so when we do we do straw polls every week to decide what we're talking about. We don't the host. We don't pick it. We put a bunch of topics up on a straw poll. Everyone selects it. We take suggestions, and when we start running low on suggestions of topics to go over, Blue sneaks in a topic called Yes.
Yeah, and so this is a throwback to like way back at the beginning of Focus Fire, where when we first started the poll, we were told by a number of people that they would not participate in the poll as long as there was not an option of yes. So in order to get people to participate, chat, it's all Willie's fault. In order to get people to participate in the poll, we had to add in yes. Well, that was all fine and good because only like 2 people would vote for it, so it wasn't a big deal. Well, then all of a sudden, I think it was Hurt Chain? I don't know. I think Hurt Chain was the one. Hurt Chain and Willie. Hurt Chain, Willie, and I want to say it was I can't. But they decided to go on a full-out campaign and actually got Yes to win, which put us in a quandary because what the hell do we talk about? Which basically resulted in we've had 2 episodes of Yes so far, and if you go back and listen to them, they're just basically us talking about pretty much anything but Destiny. The first one was
EBD.
Yeah, it's almost like the EBD part of Guardian Radio. But yeah, so that will be episode 100, which is when the giveaway will be announced. So the digital copy of Destiny 2 that everyone's been doing iTunes reviews with those iTunes reviews, please be sure to include your Discord name and hashtag FFCD2, just so that we can help track and so that I know who to contact for that copy. But yeah, so that's really, and that's a long shout out, but that's what is going on this week. Green, did I miss anything? Because I'm sure I did.
The only thing is that episode 100 is reveal, the thing I got for the guys. If you're in the quartet within our Discord, you got a sneak peek of what that's going to look like. If you haven't and you are in quartet, please let me know and I will send you the big thing is, the big reveal, because it's super cool and I wanted to show them where Blue and Justin couldn't see it.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're a liar because I'm looking at that channel now and there's nothing in there from you.
I sent it. I DM'd everybody.
Oh my gosh. Sneaky. All right. All right, guys. I think that's it. So let's run through the outro and we'll try to stay around for a little bit of an after show. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of episodes each week, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to all our other sites can also be found with our episode archives over on the new and improved www.focusfirechat.com. Thank you again, Wallen, for joining in on the conversation. I'll be sure to get your contact information up in our show notes for anyone who wants to continue chatting with you. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any feedback or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback on iTunes as well. Also, make sure to check out our partner podcast within the Guardian Radio Network over on theguardiansofdestiny.com. So, until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.